Gjithashtu,
there was a very important political motive for Kosovo Assembly and Kosovo leadership at that time to comply with America. Why? United States has been the most important partner and supporter of Kosovo's liberation and independence. And Kosovo being still a de facto state cannot basically permit itself and afford not to have allies such as the United States on its side. In a literature, actually America, United States of America, can be seen as a patron state of Kosovo because as still not fully recognized UN state, Kosovo has certain difficulties to engage in international relations. So from that point of view, there are explanations and reasons why we outside observers can see the logic why Kosovo Assembly took this step in August 2015. But if you now look what this court and how this court has been constituted, what is its statute, rules on procedure, and the efficiency when it comes to number of indictments, and the number of convictions or judgments, so far then we see that it is far from an efficient legal institution that deals with the most serious of political crimes, war crimes and crimes against humanity. Even at this very early stage of Taci et al. Trial, we see that the court is falling very short when it comes to transparency and openness of the proceedings for those who really care about it. And who are those? Obviously, people of Kosovo. So these are very major issues and points of concern when efficiency of this court is concerned, and obviously the slow pace even of Taci et al. Trial to come to the trial proceedings, actually, because they were in pre-arrest for more than 2 years, actually brings us back to this sort of, overused syntagma, which says slow justice is no justice at all. If you really want a court to be praised for its efficiency, then it should be a reasonable time from the moment that indictees are indicted, put in pre-arrest detention, awaiting the trial, and then the trial should be as swift as possible and efficient. So far, we haven't seen any of this. In the same time, you can also say that this sort of closeness of the evidence in prosecution part of the case actually can encourage any sort of witness to come in the court and tell whatever he or she wants, because he or she will feel protected if they say half truth. There was no critical mass from outside who listens to it said, hey, this person couldn't be there because we were together in Albania at the time that he and she now cites as what happens. So if prosecution uses closed sessions so far to say we need to protect our witnesses, the defense can say we need these witnesses to say these things in open because we believe that some of them are actually not telling the truth, And people whom they know, people whom they spend these critical days and years together in 98 or 99, actually could then come to us and say, no, it's not true. This witness is not telling the truth. And this is why prosecution is actually now on a slippery slope, because how could you eventually have a judgment where you cite witnesses which statements you need to blacken out in the final judgment? How credible this judgment, or if there is a conviction, would be if no one from outside the world can read judgment and say, yeah, of course, I agree with this. So any judgment in this case, based on overwhelmingly closed sessions and redacted evidence, would undermine eventual judgment, certainly convictions, but it will also undermine not this court only, it will undermine potentially the international criminal justice system. If this is a precedent, and if other courts can rely on this precedent and say, oh, we have many witnesses, but we cannot disclose their identity because they are endangered, then we are actually coming to the point where international criminal justice system will lose on its prestige and authority and integrity when it comes to acceptance of world citizens. If you read the indictment, and if you look into temporal scope and spatial scope, and if you look into the function of each of these four individuals, and the way they had to, they led their armed struggle against Serb apartheid regime, then I think the obvious conclusion would be that all four of them should be acquitted. But having said this, once these individuals enter the court and the legal systems takes over, and a legal system that is not transparent as it should be, I wouldn't be surprised if eventually there would be conviction just to prove the point of those who constituted the court, that this court was not a kangaroo court, that this court was a legitimate and legally well-founded. So justice would obviously be that this court would have never existed, and now that exists, that these people should be, indictees should be acquitted, yet there is no certainty once the court works that it could happen. And Salim Mustafa's first instance judgment of 27 years of imprisonment is absolutely outrageous in its severity. So if you then follow this logic, then you should think that those who were above him in any sort of de facto authority line as KLA commanders and leaders, if that would be in standard, then the news could be very bad. At that time, also the idea was that about 10 senior high-level KLA commanders and leaders would be indicted. And even after 8 years of workings of this court, we have only 6 people indicted. We are not counting those people, 2 indictees who are there for contempt of the court. Then you ask yourself, this court will actually exist and spend millions and millions of euros for its workings for 6 indictees. So that's economically looking into it, amazingly extravagant institution. And why they did not indict more people? Well, if you see the slow pace of this court, despite a very robust prosecution and personnel, you start to question the capacity of the prosecution at all, how difficult it is then to find, say, 4 more culprits to meet this number of, say, 10, which would be reasonable number of indictees to justify such an enormously big and expensive institution as Kosovo Specialist Chambers are. So my understanding is that the court is struggling, or prosecution is struggling so much even to handle these 6 cases that they are not up to any further investigations and indictments of more people. So the court will probably end up its work with this limited number of indictees. And what we see that Kosovo Specialist Chambers is a court, and its trials are so absolutely not followed by outside world and world audience, not just local audience, not just local public communities in Kosovo, but you do not see anything comparable to ICTY when Yugoslavia Tribunal was working. The whole world was focused on watching what was happening there. The history was being made there. Kosovo Specialist Chambers does not comply with this public interest element of this type of justice. The question is, why is it so? One of the possible explanations is that strategically looking into reasons why Kosovo Specialist Chambers has been founded at all is that obviously it had a political function to keep Serbia in dialogue with Kosovo on the status of Kosovo as an independent state. And once Serbs achieved by 2015, after years and years of pressure, to make this court a reality, they finished their political goal. They were not interested anymore what would happen with the cases. But in the same time, Kosovo political and intellectual elites and Kosovo people never actually looked into this court as a legal institution that will bring justice, because they said, what justice? They are actually going after leaders of Kosovo Liberation Army who defeated the Serbians. So you see that the whole concept and how it is conceptualized actually tells Kosovo people that it was not a court where you should and can expect justice. It was a court that was a political compromise. That could be a reason why Kosovo people do not follow day by day or whatever proceedings we are talking about.